We're ready. Wonderful. Well, thanks for inviting me here. I was thinking about how I might greet you, being a senior myself. So I went to the thesaurus, and I just got braces a couple of months ago, so some words are hard for me. So that's how I'm getting back to my younger self, is by having braces. Some of the synonyms that I discovered were older adults, the older population, golden ager, seasoned citizen. Ooh, I like that. These are getting better, by the way.
Yes.
Or worse, however you want to think about it. This one took me by surprise, the unyoung. And you know, you can love this one or not, was the wrinklies.
Oh.
But the best one, I've got to put it up here. So, what do you think? Is that the best one? Or did you like the unyoung? Well, either way, I'm happy to be here. Very happy to be here. As Gareth said, my name is Lisa Shuh, and I like to define myself in a few ways. First of all, a Christ follower. I hope that should be at the top of my priority list at all times. I'm married to Robert, and we happily run a 50-acre orchard just outside of Elmira. I've been retired from teaching for 11 years and loving it. And we have, out of our collaboration, we've produced 4 children and 7 grandchildren, all who are following the Lord. So, you know, that's pretty fruitful. I would say that's fruitful. So far, so good. And I have a deep love for WMB Church. So I actually was married right here. I'll show you how I was standing. And for those of you who know Chuck Buller, he could see that we were starting to rock. He was marrying us. He could see we were starting to rock. So he said, we were getting a little nervous, he said, "Lisa, do you take this man with the big hands?" And if you've ever looked at Robert's hands, they are big. And that just calmed us down. Well, why am I here today? You're probably asking yourself, why is she here today? What brought me to being passionate about housing refugees in homes, which I will refer to as open homes from here on in. So I'd like you to go with me on a journey that brought me to volunteering with community justice initiatives. That is a mouthful, I'll say it again, community justice initiatives. But I'm going to use the acronym, which will fly by, it's CJI. So if you hear me saying that, that's what I'm talking about. And I brought with me someone from CJI, Julie Friesen, who is going to be speaking a little bit later. Robert and I took our 4 kids, 12, 10, 8, and 6, in the year 2000 to the country of Nicaragua. When we went there, we had a little bit of Spanish. We had jobs. I was going to be teaching at an international school. Robert was going to be doing a development project with sesame farmers. And we knew that we were allowed to be in the country. So all of those things were good things. But when we got there, we stayed in a guest house at the very beginning. The first night we stayed in the guest house, there were bats in the closet. And they were flying around. All our kids were sleeping in the same room. The bats were flying around and just causing panic and havoc. And then the next day there was an earthquake, just a small one. When we were sitting at the table, Robert had gone to work. He was already off to work, and the table was shaking, and the kids and I were looking at each other going, I think that might have been an earthquake. So that was our arrival. We didn't have a place to live. I didn't know my way around the city. It was a city without signage. It had experienced an earthquake in 1972, and when they rebuilt, things just didn't really come back together with signage. So we had to learn all of those things, find a place to live, and so on. But what I did know is that we had financial means and we knew that we were there legitimately. So I didn't give the displacement of refugees a lot of thought. At that point, I hadn't really thought about refugees. And then a really pivotal event happened. That was when a friend from WMB, after we'd come back from Nicaragua, said to us, I'm not feeling well and I've invited a Rwandan family over for lunch, but I really can't do it. Can you do it? Well, of course we can. So to our home came one Sunday afternoon, Josephine, Augustine, and their 2 children. And we heard their story. It came out of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, where they were forced to flee. Augustine went one way, Josephine went the other. They ended up in 2 different countries. Their children were young, and they fled to Canada. They had lost family members in the genocide. They'd suffered a tremendous amount of trauma. Here they were in Canada. So at that point, it really clicked with me what displacement means. I had kind of a small inkling because I had been put out of my comfort zone, but here was this family who had come to Canada not knowing anything about the country. They knew a lot about a lot of things. Absolutely, Scripture needs to inform what I do. Wow, we just had an unbelievable series on spiritual gifts. I'm trusting that you all learned wonderful things about yourself or had things in yourself affirmed. And I just love how Scripture talks to us. So I want to share some overarching Scripture that I think we have to have for this discussion. Matthew 25, verses 31 to 40. But when the Son of Man comes in glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit upon his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered in his presence. All the nations. Did you hear that? And he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then those righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick, or in prison and visit you?" And the king will say, "I tell you the truth. When you did it to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." Thanks be for the Word of God that reminds us where our passions come from, where our gifts are coming from. So there we are. I've got some experience of being displaced. I've suddenly met this refugee family. I'm feeling this passion inside of me. I've got to solve injustice overnight. But I'm going to start slowly. I've been using the term refugee. And for you, refugee might conjure up many different things. So I thought it's good to have some groundwork. So we're going to do a little bit of reading from the table. You've got some papers on your table, because I think it's important that you understand that there are different types of refugees. At the top it says legal pathways to enter Canada as a refugee. So these are the legal pathways. We're hearing about all sorts of other things, and I want to focus on the legal ways. After World War II, the United Nations created the UNHCR, also known as the UN Refugee Agency. The organization identifies refugees in need of relocation, while governments around the world accept varying numbers of these identified refugees. the Canadian government agrees to resettle a certain number of refugees identified by the UNHCR, and then screens those refugees for security and health-related concerns. Once approved, government-sponsored refugees come to Canada already knowing that they will be allowed to stay. They receive financial support for their first year here, as well as a variety of service to aid in their resettlement. This process takes a long time. Refugees may wait years in refugee camps to be approved by the Canadian government, and the screening process can take months to a year as well. Many stay on that list indefinitely, and I know some of you around the room, I'm thinking, Janet, you've been involved in some government-sponsored refugees as well. I think from Burundi. Was it Burundi? Myanmar. That's absolutely not anywhere near Burundi, but it used to be Burma, so hence my B-U-R, Burundi, my goodness. I do know my geography. What stood out to you in there? What key information did you pull out of there about a government-sponsored refugee? Vis-a-vis their security. What did you notice? Is there any threat to them once they get here? No, they may stay. They've been cleared, they're going to stay.
Takes a long time.
It takes a very long time. And just like it said, you may wait in the refugee camp. And an example, in Rwanda, the Kiziba refugee camp has been functioning since 1994 when Congolese refugees came across to Rwanda after fighting. It still exists, it's a little city-state. It's tough. So next type. Privately sponsored. Just give you the quick rundown on that. It's basically the same, except that a small group of people will get together and they will provide the security of a home and the finances for that first year. Key factor though, a privately sponsored refugee, no lack of security. They are going to be here. They've been cleared, they're going to stay here. Let's go on to refugee claimants. Sometimes refugee claimants are called asylum seekers. For some refugees, their need for safety is so immediate that waiting for the UNHCR approval is not a possibility. Generally, refugee claimants are not in a refugee camp. They're in their homes and violence is perpetrated against them. We don't always know what that is when they arrive here in Canada. We know there's something that was strong enough to force them to pull up stakes, leave everything, leave businesses, home, family, and run. If they're able, they may choose to come directly to Canada and claim refugee status at the Canadian border, or after they arrive and are in Canada. For this individual or family, the approval process happens while they live in Canada, and at the end, a decision is made by the Immigration and Refugee Board as to whether the person or family is accepted as a refugee and is allowed to remain in Canada. There's the insecurity of a refugee claimant right there. Absolutely very long process. Throughout that process, there can be times when applications are turned down. Appeals are started. Money. Another appeal is started. Money. They're always having to pay to make these appeals, not just to the government, but to a lawyer. We've had some families with us who have been deported. Gareth, you and I have walked with a family who was deported. It's just heartbreaking. WB has walked with a family who had a beautiful ending to it, but it's just not always the greatest story. You can look at that in more detail later, but my question for you is, who do you think is the most vulnerable group? Is it the government-sponsored refugees, the privately sponsored refugees, or the refugee claimants or asylum seekers? 1, 2, or 3?
3.
3, yeah. by a wide margin. And I'm not saying that it's not easy, or that it's easy for the others, but when you come knowing, this was kind of like when we went to Nicaragua, we knew it was okay for us to be in the country. These people are feeling that I have no status. I've had my passport removed, and I just have to wait. Just have to wait. Now we know who's the most vulnerable. I'm going to put you to work. At your table, you'll see some stapled together slips of paper. And my question is, what does a refugee need to do when they first arrive here in Canada? Compass, of course, does all their legal work. I know you're aware of Compass. They're just a wonderful organization. We work with them as well. And that's one thing that's taken care of, but it's also part of the process. So I just didn't want you to think that CJI was suddenly doing all the work that Compass does. No. No, we are more interested in putting them in homes. So your job with these slips of paper is to decide which tasks come first, second, and so on. And again, we're going to see if we agree. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. So tear them apart. Go, Kathy. Kathy's got it figured out. And yes, you may talk, and by all means, call a friend. Go to the next table. Peek over somebody's shoulder. I'm going to come around like the teacher I am. It's good to see you all working hard and that you like each other and cooperate. I didn't see any fights and have to send anyone to the principal or anything like that. If you put food and clothing at the top, wave at me from your table. If you put food and clothing at the top. If you put housing at the top. Anybody put citizenship at the top? No. Anybody put friends at the top? Really? That kind of surprised me because I'm imagining many of the families that I know do not know a single person. So my question is, where are they finding those friends?
But Lisa, Janet.
With Janet. Okay, not every organization has a Janet. I'm sorry, but.
But I think when you're a refugee and you're coming, you need to have people in your court that you may not
Absolutely.
call friends, but they become friends and they direct you.
Absolutely. Those are some top priorities. Of course, I thought I was leading you down the garden path because I think I would need a place to stay when I first came. Yeah, that was going to be my top, but I understand food and clothing because you've just arrived with one suitcase and families arrive in the middle of winter not knowing what winter really means. So, yeah, I would have to say that housing is the top priority, but I appreciate how the first 3 or 4 things that you guys had there were bang on. Some of those other things, income, language, yeah, they're important, but they're not that immediate feeling. If housing is the top priority, how would that be challenging to someone who's just arrived? Don't know the city. Don't have money. Remember I said if you're an asylum seeker, you've just left. You've left it all behind, so you don't have money. Those of you who've been in the rental market, you have to have some sort of reference, some sort of credit score. And how are the rents going in KW these days?
You have to sometimes have first and last month's rent.
You have to have first and last
If you don't
month's
have
rent.
money for that.
You have to show that you've got an income. Solution for that? I have a really great solution for that. It's called open homes. Stay in someone's home. Why not? Why not? So what does it look like to have someone arrive in your home? I want to tell you a funny story. About 7 or 8 years ago, Robert and I were contemplating whether we would host somebody. We lived outside of Elmira at that time in a farm. And, but I got a call from Compass and they said, we've got this family of 4 from Columbia. It's the beginning of December and it's a cold December. I just went, okay, I think we can do this. So this is exactly how it happened. They had arrived that day and we went to get them that same day to bring them to our home. And I just vividly remember, we had a red Venza, why that stuck in my mind, but we had a red Venza and all the suitcases went to the back. David and Julian and Carolina and Julian climbed in, and Bruce and Terry, you might remember that family was with us for our family celebration. And I drove them out to the farm, which was about a 30-minute drive. And we've continued to see David and Julia, see them flourish. Kids are in university, nursing school, like it's just amazing. And they were sharing that they just remember getting into this car with this woman that they just met, and they drove out of this city that they didn't know anything about, and all of a sudden they were out in the middle of nowhere, in the snow, and they arrived at the house, and that was a very strong memory in their part. Well, did we laugh about this? I said, yeah, it was quite ridiculous, but that is the spirit of open homes. It is the radical hospitality that people do. David and Julian moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. They lived with us for a month over Christmas, went to live with another family, lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, hosted a family of 5, her sister, I think, or brother, and then bought their own house, have hosted 2 other families since then. You want to talk about multiplication? There it is. It's such a beautiful story. Donna,
Yes.
tell us about staying in a home. What are the advantages? I know she can talk for a long time on this topic. I've given her 5 minutes. And she's from the trenches. Dawn and I, we've had some laughs too, haven't we?
Oh,
We've said things like, I didn't see that coming.
Totally. So to follow up, Lisa, this is my extended family, okay? There's 4 people who aren't in this picture. These are they threw a dinner party for us after everybody moved out, got set up. This is my extended family. This family, and they're not even the same family. These are the people that God has put into our lives, the Dennison household. And they're amazing, like the same thing. We've got people that are flourishing. Rodrigo here in the back has his own company, he has 8 employees. Over here, they're just doing amazing. And they're still parts of our life, and we have been blessed by them, absolutely. So I'm just gonna pass this around as this, we're the white people. So it's Donna and Neil Dennison, and we have Philip. And so I can tell stories forever, honestly. I can tell you about how we got involved in it. But our bottom line is, when we hear of other people, our family goes, wouldn't we want to do this for somebody? Like if our family members were stranded in a different country for safety, wouldn't we want somebody to open up their house for them? Like that's our bottom line. So we have had 4 different families live with us. Caveat, next, if you take people into your house, total blessing, make sure you put a timeline on when they leave, okay? The last person we didn't, she was with us for 2 years.
Oh.
She brought her fiance to us to see if it was okay. She's part of our family. But we didn't get them through CGI. We got them from Ukraine. Anyway, so no worries about security. These people have gone through so much to get to Canada. They will never do anything that will cause you to want to turn them out or call the police on them. Your silver might be really important to you. It is not worth the life of them being turned out into the street. Please, there's nothing. Don't worry about you don't speak the language. You got Google Translate. You got sign language. These people need friends. You need to be able to just hug them if they're crying. You don't have to understand them. A hug is important. It is delightful sharing our house. Our house, we don't have a separate kitchen. We share an entrance that works. But we do have a basement suite where they can hang out. So we love it. My husband used to be a very private person. He comes home and there is like Spanish going on over there, and there's a 2-year-old hanging out over there, and the house smells fabulous, and there's like chaos, but that's okay, because we have a big enough space that we take families of 5, okay? I don't recommend that. If you've got the space, that is super awesome, do that. But we have learned so much. We had one family, we had a grandma and a 2-year-old, and everybody in between. So it was great. It was really terrific. My son gets the opportunity, depending on which family we have. He gets to be a big brother. He gets to be a little brother. God has brought the refugee people into our house, and we do other things also. I had a fridge kit stuck on our fridge because we were paying for this little girl to have surgery to get her club feet fixed. The grandma from Colombia, her granddaughter had club feet. It was another touch point. We had a family that came in, their son was autistic. We know all about that. You gotta get into Kids Ability, we're gonna help you in the school system, things like that. It has been such a blessing to our family. Challenging, absolutely. Ukrainian and Russian, no concept. None. Okay, thank goodness that woman spoke English. That was great. And they need your friendship. And if they come into your house, it's different than moving into an apartment. You can move into an apartment and be really isolated and not know things. So we've had people living in our basement, and we've been super excited because it's May 24th or it's Canada Day, and we have gone downstairs on more than one occasion and go, this is terrific, and they have been cowering in the corners because they think it's gunfire. Right? Like things that if they lived on their own, it would not occur to them. It would not occur to somebody to go to the next door neighbor and go, hey, no, it's a celebration, it's okay, right? There's that. There's little things like the police come to the door for whatever, like they were just doing a community thing, and they're terrorized. Right? Or we're driving down the street with them and they say the police officers, and it twigs you to say, you know what, in Canada, they're your friends. They're not gonna do this to you, they're not gonna do this. If you have a problem or your teenage girl is walking alone and she's scared, you call the police. They're here to help you. Totally different from most countries, right? And living on their own, it's gonna take them a long time to figure that out, right? So there's those things. And then we had one story. We had, he was 20 from Colombia. He came with his mom and his little brother. And he's out one night. He goes to the Tim Hortons. And he comes home, it's like 11 o'clock at night. And he's beside himself. He's so excited. He comes home and we're like, hey, what's up? He's like, I was at Tim Hortons. And we're like, uh-huh. And he's like, and look. And I'm like, okay, what? He's like, look. I got my shoes, I got my hat, I got my phone, and I got my jacket. Nobody took anything of mine. I'm like, oh my gosh, seriously? So when we talk to the families that have lived with us, we say things like, what is the thing you like best about Canada? And without a doubt, everybody says it's safe here. And it breaks my heart that people have to go through so much stuff and they get to the borders and they go, now what do we do? Like we've been brave and we've been sorry. We've been brave and we've been strong and we got this far. but we don't have cash and we don't know where to go. And so there are these wonderful communities that take in refugees, and I can't imagine how hard being a refugee is. I can't. I know the people that have lived with me. They're genuine, lovely people. Any differences that we've had in our house is cultural, you know, and you find a Spanish speaking person and you say, you gotta explain this to me because we're not on the same page, right? And they wanna help, they wanna contribute, they love Canada, they wanna be part of Canada. And most of them don't wanna go back. They've come from Toronto, you know, and they just need a safe place to just sit. They can't sit for long because they've got so much they need to do, citizenship and paperwork and stuff like that. But they just need a place where people are just going to love them. You know, share your table with them. I used to get really freaked out because I don't have a grasp of different languages, but seriously, if you let somebody in your kitchen and they start cooking, it all kind of just works out. And we've had some fabulous meals, and it's been really great. So is there anything else you want me to address?
Oh, Donna, you've addressed it perfectly. We hear your passion, and it's right by your heart. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm open for questions all the time. Like, I would love to tell people about how we're blessed. We are totally blessed by having these people in our house. It's challenging. It's hard. But you gotta love people. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm probably done now, because what more could you say than that? You can hear the passion in Donna's voice. And you know, I hope you've all moved friends and housing together. Did you catch that? These people are friends. They're friends for life. Yeah. Where does WMB fit into all this picture? You might not know the history, so just a brief history. About 2 decades ago, some families in Kitchener-Waterloo began to open their homes and welcome refugee claimants into them. As the practice of this home-based hospitality began to grow, a group from this church met together to name this organization, this movement, and support its growth. And that's when it became Open Homes. That was back about 2014. Open Homes was born as a program of WMB, and I, along with Isaiah Ritzman, Josh and Andrea Hill, and a number of other stakeholders here, started to make it formalized. You might not know the people among you who have hosted or been part of this story, but there are lots of them in this room. Some families that you might know are Dave and Marilyn Cannon. We have our own Cheryl Belch and Dave Clayworth, who are going to speak with us later. Lynette Millette and Richard Halinga. Bill Cressman, his daughter Leah, Ella May's daughter. Great story, because your daughter and her husband Jade started hosting and convinced her dad that he should do that too. Carmen and Carlos Villa, Darren and Julie DeMello, Jake and Stephanie Martin White, Andrea and Josh Hill, Kristen and Mark House. The list is huge, and lots of people in supporting roles as well. So within a couple of years, the network grew to about 20 families, and WMB was also welcoming hosts from outside the church community. But as things grew in that direction, there was a choice made for it to move outside WMB. Of course, WMB people continued to host. And the pandemic came. You might recognize that that would not be a time when people would be saying yes to hosting. Very challenging. But post-pandemic, in December of 2021, Isaiah and I decided, let's reach out to the hosts who've been so faithful and see whether they'd consider getting back into it. We were completely voluntary. We didn't really have any kind of an organization behind us. It was just the two of us with what we were passionate about and what we thought we could offer as far as advice. We were desiring for open homes to be more sustainable, we had this core of faithful people we're going to continue hosting. And we discovered that CJI had a program called Home Share, and that had so many similarities to what we were doing in open homes. So Julie and I and Isaiah and Allison Harris met to start talking about things early in 2024, and there was a decision for CGI to embrace us as a program. That was pretty exciting. I'd like Julie to talk about CGI because she's an expert. So Julie Friesen, friend and colleague.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invitation, and I'll try to make it short as well. I know you have lunch and there's some more that we'll share. I just want to let you know that on the table in the back, I have a sign-up sheet for our newsletter, as well as a QR code if you do that sort of thing, to take a picture of that you can sign up to be a part of our newsletter. And just for example, just this last newsletter that we had, we featured an open home story, which was really powerful. So this is CJI's newest program. It's really exciting to join such an important grassroots movement that has actually expanded beyond this community. There's folks in different cities around us who have modeled their program after what WMB started. So it's like those are the ripple effects that you can see from a small group. Many great things can happen. From one person, many great things can happen. So my background, my last name is Friesen. I immigrated to Canada in 1997. I'm originally from Bluffton, Ohio. And my family are Russian Mennonites from Kansas. So my dad moved to Bluffton, Ohio to be a professor at Bluffton College. And so I grew up many years there until I moved here and I met my husband, Paul Reimer, who's from Calgary. So when I moved here, I didn't know anyone as well, but similar to what Lisa was talking, I knew I could be here. I spoke the language. I had someone, one person, who I knew and connected with. And I had something that was very familiar to me as well. So what was really important to me about working at CJI, as well as the programs like Open Homes, is my background in the Mennonite Church. I'm a member of the First Mennonite Church in Bluffton, Ohio still. And the really important aspects of that to me are the peace and justice that I see living out in Community Justice Initiatives, or CJI. So if some of you are familiar, I'll say the story very quickly. The organization I'm a part of, CJI, started with a story in 1974 when, in the town of Elmira, when folks, there were two young men who vandalized a whole bunch of properties there. And there were some Mennonite Central Committee workers who were actually in the probation office and parole office as volunteer probation officers. And two of those folks were Dave Worth and Mark Yancey. And the idea so they were, it's really a foreign concept now to think about having placements in such government institutions. Like, this is sort of unheard of at this moment. But what this idea was, they brought their backgrounds in peace and justice and thought to themselves, what is missing? And they saw one thing missing, and that was the human component. The fact that real people were harmed. It wasn't just breaking a law against our state or our government. It was actually real people being harmed. And so their idea was to actually get people together and introduce some people who didn't know each other after actually significant harm had happened. And as a result, people heard from each other about how they'd been hurt. They heard from each other about the context of maybe why someone had acted in that way. And lives were changed as a result of that. I happened to be speaking at a class at Conestoga College many years after 1974, and I was telling this story. And someone from the front row, an older gentleman, walked up to me and he said, I was one of those 2 men. And what we ended up getting is a little bit of the story and the ripple impacts of not, as a result of doing this work, they didn't get incarcerated, and just thinking about the different ways that that impacted his life, as well as the folks who had been harmed as well. And so from that idea, there was, CGI continues this mission, and how I like to talk about it now is that what we really look at is bringing people together. Bringing people together who may not know each other, finding intentional spaces and places for people to build relationship with each other. Usually, it's after when there's been harm, not always. And finding those, so this happens all the time, by the way, of course, that we meet people, that when we harm someone, we go there, we apologize. This happens outside of places like CJI or other places where this happens. But what we really, especially in this time of polarization, where we are seeing people as others and not as human beings, that we feel called to intentionally create these spaces and places where people can build relationships with each other, where people can dialogue across differences. And we do that in so many different ways. And so where Open Homes really connects with us is about creating those intentional spaces and places where people come together and help each other. And that usually is not one way. I think you just heard. This is a back and forth way. And so we're really excited to shine a light on the importance of coming together in times of difficulty, in times of harm, and finding ways to move forward together when that's possible. We don't force people to do these things, it's voluntary, but if we don't have those spaces and places for this to happen, then maybe it won't happen. As far as Open Homes, we're so excited to have, this is our newest program, and so excited about the folks who are joining us. As we said, it's been fairly recent that it's been happening, so we're sort of still in that transition phase. But I want to sort of, and I think Lisa might do this as well, but to leave you with a bit of call to action from CJI. And one of those is, be a champion, which I think you already are in your church. And so that might be just making sure that you know what's going on, being a part of the newsletter. It might be that you want to volunteer for the program and just be a support for an Open Homes relationship. So that might, you're not necessarily sharing your home, but what you could do is be a friend of that Open Homes. And so that might be providing support, maybe having someone for the dinner for a while, something like that, a friendship network. We all talked about how important friends were. And that's very important in this. You can also volunteer and open your home to someone. And that's something that CJI will support you to do, a training, talking to others who've already done that. And obviously one of our expertise is helping people actually create understanding and agreements with each other. So we're going to try to build in a process to this where we help you have conversations with each other about what that could look like to live with each other. And the other way you can do is actually donate to the program as well. So we don't have any government funding for this. This is supported by some foundations. A shout out to Kindred Charitable Foundation that is supporting this, as well as the Sisters of St. Joseph Foundation. And then it's actually people like you donating to make this happen. And with very little money, we can make lots of good things happen. So thanks for your time, and I look forward to the rest. Is there anything else, Lisa?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Well, it's so great, I don't have to do all the talking, so I'm gonna call David and Cheryl to come on up to the microphone, and I guess we'll kind of tag team. Do you guys do you like that for your notes?
So David and Cheryl are
longtime hosts, they're gonna tell you, how many times is it that you've hosted?
6 times.
6 times, not just 1 time, 6 times. That's a great number. And I have some questions for you. So let's start with why you decided to host and why you've continued to host.
First of all, I married an immigrant from Britain. He didn't speak the language, kind of. And the culture.
Was here legally?
We were married about coming up 16 years ago, and we bought a house that had more rooms in it than we actually needed just for the 2 of us. And then we decided that we really needed to dedicate this house to God, and we thought, oh, we'll probably just host a small group or something like that. We set up an apartment in the basement for my nephew, who was attending Conestoga College at the time. And then a few years later, one of the pastors from WNB came to us and said, do you think you would consider taking in an international student who is recovering from meningitis and is not able to continue anymore at school? And so we thought, well, okay, it was a stretch for me because I'm an introvert and I like my space, but we thought, well, okay, we can put them in the basement. And well, her mother came as well to take care of her. So that was a test run for me, and it turned out to be a very positive experience. And after that, we felt that God was asking us to join Open Homes, and we kind of tiptoed in by being part of a support circle at the first, and then we decided to take someone in. So we have hosted 6 people over 7 or 8 years. They've come from the Gambia, which is in Africa. I'd never even heard of it before. Eritrea, Colombia, South Sudan, Mexico.
Kenya. Kenya/Congo/Uganda.
Yeah.
Just trying to list all the places this guy had been before he came to Canada.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's how we got into it.
Do you have some favorite stories? I know you do. Please tell me your favorite stories.
How long have we got?
Well, we're right on time, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That
you're
means
doing fine.
I
I've saved lots
means
of
I
time.
can run over. Yeah, so we've had 6, as Cheryl said, we've had 6 people, and all very different. Our first was a lady called Matida. She's fine with us telling you this, by the way. This is not breaking any code. She came to us from the Gambia, which is Equatorial Africa. She'd been a advocate for women's rights. Sorry, am I too far away? How about this? Advocate for women's rights, which in the Gambia, which was, let's be honest, at that time, an Islamic dictatorship, women's rights meant your husband couldn't go off and marry another woman just because he felt like it and didn't consult you. Campaigning that girls didn't undergo female genital mutilation. Campaigning for husbands not to be able to beat their wives whenever they wanted. So that was the radical work she was engaged in. And somewhere along the line, there had been a rumor that she was going to run in the rigged elections against the dictator, and the police hauled her in, and anyway, long story, she ended up in Canada, thanks to a friend here. So Equatorial Africa, she came here in August, didn't really know much about Canada. October came around and we were saying, you need some warm clothes for the winter in Canada. And she went, oh, okay. We said, you really do? Okay. And then the temperature dropped from, 15 down to 5 one day. And she came back and she said, I didn't really believe you when you said that it was going to get very cold. And she said, now I believe you, it's very cold. We said, no, it's not. No, it's a lot colder than this. She stayed with us for a year, and she went on to University of Toronto after that, got a 4-year degree, and then amazingly, 4 years after we'd said goodbye to us, we got a call and said, I want you to come to our graduation, my graduation. So we went up to the University of Toronto, and she's teaching, I think somewhere, teaching elementary. Yeah, so that was great. She adjusted really well. One of our other guys that we got more recently, this is really emphasizing when we're talking about how important the housing is. Just a year or 2 years, 1 year ago, year and a half, we got a Facebook, I think, from Shuh who runs Compass, and she said, I've got this guy, he's landed today from Kenya, he's got nothing. He came to the Compass office, this is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's got nowhere to stay, and Shuh said, okay, so I drove him to the shelter, and the shelter is full. All the shelters are full. He is literally going to have to sleep on the streets. And we were just taking a break at this point from between hostings, but we said, okay, we can't really turn this guy down. And I'm so glad that we didn't. We just literally talked to him. You always you always meet them. You don't just take them unseen. You have a little talk first. And we took him in. And we did all the things that you need to do, which we took him to get a phone plan. I mean, phone plan isn't on that list, but
so important.
Phone is, don't look at refugees and say, oh, they can't be that poor, they've got a mobile phone. A mobile phone is absolutely a necessity. Nobody can contact you, nobody can do anything, reach out to you without a mobile phone. So we got him a mobile phone plan, we got him a bank account, we went to the Salvation Army to get him a warm coat. This was November, so he was going to need it as well. What did we take him? I took him to his English was pretty good, but we took him to Learn English, Make Friends, took him to the community notice board there. He was a musician back home, played at a church, and he was looking to link up with other African musicians to do stuff like that, and we were working on that. And then like 2 weeks into this process, he came to me and he said, I've had this call from a pastor in Toronto who knows my pastor back in Kenya, and he said, if you come to Toronto, we can find you somewhere to live, we can let you play in the worship band at our church, we can give you some work to do in response to that, in exchange for that. And John said, do you think this is a good idea? And we said, yes, it is. This is perfect. People from your culture, people from who are going to really, really look after you. But we were doing our best, but these guys were much, much better. He called us 6 months later and said, hey, I just wanted to call you and say thank you. I'm doing really well. So, yeah. Who else was supposed to be talking about? I forget now. Oh. Little cultural stuff. We had a guy from Mexico. He wanted to thank us for some things, and he thought he'd do something nice for us. So he went to our larder and got some potatoes, and he planted them in our flower bed. It was a nice gesture.
We were away at the time, so we didn't know. I gave them this bag because I thought they're starting to sprout, we have them used up. And so after we got back, these plants started coming up in our garden. I'm going, what was that? What is that? And I pulled them off these potatoes.
Cheryl, I had somebody plant potatoes at my house too.
Can you
you share a little bit about how your faith and your relationship with Jesus informs what you do?
After I graduated with my counseling degree, God gave me a couple of passages to use as life verses. And actually, Lisa, you read the one that really applies in this. So basically, Matthew 25, I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. And so we, whenever I look at ministry opportunities, I kind of put them through that filter, and there's another verse as well. So we felt that it was our mandate to basically share the extra space that God had provided us. People were in desperate need of places to stay. We had the room for them, and so we could show them the love of God in that manner. Two of our guests were Muslim, and we had a few conversations with them when they started asking us questions about our faith. And so we thought, well, you can go overseas to be a missionary, or else you can be a missionary in your own home with people coming in to live with you, and you just demonstrate in your relationship the love of God and be that friend for them and that advocate.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
My last question was about cultural barriers, and how do the challenges change you?
Good. So, I think it's about an awareness of how fortunate we are. You know, Canada is rich and safe by any global standards. We are rich and safe, and we have really nice lives, even if we may not think so looking at other Canadians around us. And I think the teaching of Jesus is really, it's, you know, we have to share this. That's it kind of puts everything else, you know, anything that happens to you in perspective when you look at people who have literally had to flee for their lives and go somewhere where they don't know anybody, where they don't speak the language, where the cultural challenge is going to be, and they've had to come here just to be safe. That's it. Any challenge that we're getting is going to be pretty small by that comparison. Do you have something else to say too? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's time for you to think about what your response would be. And I hope you've noticed that I've sketched out quite a few different scenarios of living experiences. We've got a family who had a 2-bedroom apartment who chose to host. Neil and Donna still have a child at home. We had Andrea and Josh Hill who hosted through the birth of 2 of their children. We've got David and Cheryl who, when they began hosting, were both working full-time. Lots of different examples of where people were in their lives, and lots of shared kitchens, right? Yeah, really sharing your space, and that challenges people. As you think about being challenged and whether you could come alongside a family or actually open your home and host, I just wanted to remind you about the Herb Street story if you don't already know it. It was one July afternoon in 1924, the staging ground for the greeting and billeting of more than 800 Mennonites in flight from Russia. There are photos of this. After a harrowing 4-week ocean passage, walked from their train, Caroline Street, to the horse sheds out behind the church, many carrying all they owned in their arms. I just did a little digging and found a typewritten list of all the people who who took in some of these 800 refugees. And lo and behold, Grandpa Clarence. We did not know that. Did you know that, Bruce and Terry? My father-in-law Howard, his father Clarence, took in some refugees back then. And then I started highlighting all the names around Hawksville and Elmira. So many of these families went to farm families. So 800 people went home with families. Praise Jesus for that.
Yeah.
And what an example to us. So your lunchtime chat, you can talk about the weather, but I also want you to challenge one another. Where could you jump in? Julie's going to be here over lunch. Go and talk to her, talk to me. You've got amazing people here you can talk to. So thanks for inviting me and allowing me to tell this beautiful story, which is not just my story. It's, as you can see, it's a family story. Thank you.